Good morning, Renee. How are you doing today?
Good morning, Magic. I am well. It's only 11:30 here and I think it's 5:30 p.m. for you, right? To give people an idea of our time difference.
Yes, 5:30. It's this time when I'm slowly getting ready for the dinner. My kids and my wife will. I mean, no, my kids are home now, but my wife will come back from work soon, so we're gonna have a dinner. Yeah,
Excellent. Very nice. Very
for
nice.
you it's lunchtime. Yes.
Yes. My husband and I are getting used to being empty nesters. So our daughter has moved out and it's just us after a long time. We will have our 30th wedding anniversary in about a week.
Any plans?
We might go see. There's a Japanese garden here in Florida, and it has a tea ceremony. Of course, we would go and do a traditional Japanese tea ceremony. So that seems to be the thing that's winning right now. Yeah,
I'm gonna call with the best wishes next week then. Yeah.
thank you very much. Thank you. I'm excited about our session today.
Oh yes, absolutely. We promised to give a little bit of our experience
Hmm.
after we had our conversation, our kind of a thank you conversation. I don't know if you call it. How do you call it? Thank you conversation.
Well, I wouldn't call it that, but for the listeners that did not listen to our previous episode, we're starting a series, Beyond the Badge, really talking about our experience. And it's been 2 years since Magic and I, a little bit over, received that calendar invite on a on a specific day to let us know that our services were no longer needed. And we could move on to other adventures. And that's a critical 2 week window, and that's really going to be our focus today. So, for those that have been recently laid off, this is going to be an interesting, I would say, an interesting session for you. Of course, it's been now 2.5 or 2 years plus later for Magic and myself. So, we have, I would say, the benefit of having a different perspective now that so much time has passed. So, yeah.
Yes, and today we're gonna talk about the this critical moment after you had your conversation and the time that you have. And we need to make this a bit of a distinction, Renee, because I'm in Europe, you're in the US.
Mm-hmm.
European employees, whether you're individual contributor, manager, director, VP, senior VP, have a different treatment because of the legal structure
Mm-hmm.
laws that govern the employment laws.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
typically get a little bit more protection
Yeah.
uh, and a little bit more time to act.
Mm-hmm.
In the US, depending on a state, I think you can
Mm-hmm.
get anything from 0 to a month of
Mm-hmm.
notice.
Mm-hmm.
In Europe, there is a little bit longer time typically.
Mm-hmm.
Nevertheless, I think changing, taking an action after you had a conversation, it doesn't matter whether you have 2 weeks, 2 months,
Yeah.
2 years. Like
Mm-hmm.
I've known, I knew the situations when people had a 2 years
Mm-hmm.
exit period.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Nevertheless, you should be taking an action, a certain actions once you had this conversation. And many times people are in shock. They don't have a clear mind. They don't get a
Yeah.
guidance. They don't get a proper guidance. So Renee and I would like to talk to you about having this 2 years perspective. If I would go back, okay,
Mm-hmm.
and take an action, what would I do differently, and what is the list of things that everybody should do, either once they have been notified about the exit from the company, or they've made a decision.
Mm-hmm.
Renee, I would even argue that most of the tips and the recommendations that we're going to give to the audience are also applicable if you know or if you expect that the conversation is going to happen.
Yeah, and I actually I do fractional chief people officer work at a few companies, and even when employees notify, they self-select to leave and separate the company voluntarily, not because of whatever reason, right? And the custom in most places is to give a 2-week notice. I would say that everything we've put together for our audience here applies for that separation as well, because you're going to go through similar emotions and you'll have similar needs, both tactical or logistics needs. And I think it's applicable for that as well. I think people like don't necessarily always think that they're going to go through the same emotional or tactical steps when they're the ones choosing to leave. But what I've learned and what I've seen in these 2 years since my own departure is that whether it's initiated by the company or it's initiated by you, the separation period of those 2 weeks is very similar. I would say the big difference is some of the emotional impact. So, for example, when you go through a separation, and I have in preparation for this call, I was rereading a research paper from 2008, and it talks about the feelings of anger or confusion or despair that a particular employee might go through depending on how that meeting to let them know that they're going to be impacted by a separation went, and how they perceive that, if they perceive that it was fair or unfair. So it talks about those different emotions. So really, that's the big differentiator. If somebody lets you go, it's how they do it, and we address some of that too in one of the slides. I think it's in the first slide. But yeah, this is going to be applicable, and I would say interesting for different perspectives.
So whether you have been notified that you need to leave the organization, or you are planning to leave on your own, or you expect that
You have
you might
suspicions.
you have
Yeah.
suspicions, I'd say, take those tips and those recommendations, because I
Hmm.
think they come. There's no there are very little, kind of a resources out there for you.
Hmm.
We call this episode as the to-do list HR won't send you, because
Yeah.
um, we're going to talk about the resources and where to ask for help, but typically there is no immediate, when you get this kind of a decision, there's
Hmm.
nobody is going to send you a list of things to
Yeah.
do and how to act. So we thought that maybe we could help here a little bit and give you a bit of our perspective on what should be done, what are the steps that you need to do. First of all, you need to go through the mind reset. Mind reset meaning you've been made redundant, and from that point in time, you are no longer an employee of a company.
Hmm.
It's very difficult to acknowledge that, right? To internalize it, Renée.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, even when you're expecting it, because you might have heard rumors that the department is getting eliminated, for example. Or in some cases, you have really great bosses that will give you a heads up and say, hey, we're going to restructure, and you might be impacted because they might know that there's a budget cut coming or something, right?
Mhm.
Because in some cases, it's not about, and I would say, in most cases, it's not about you or performance. It's about things that are outside of your control. It doesn't have anything to do with um, how you were doing. And in some cases, it is, but in a lot of cases, it's not. Um, so, yeah, it's interesting to, you feel like a bucket of water, even if when you finally get that reality check moment and said, here's your last day, right? And you're having the conversation of, we're eliminating your role, or you're no longer the person, the role stays, but your skills and your experience are no longer what we need to take that role forward, or how we envision that role in the future, right?
There
um
might be a lot of reasons.
mhm
The point is, the moment you have the conversation, just acknowledge the fact that this is
Yeah.
no longer the situation. You're no longer an employee. You are now starting to be a free person, let's say free agent,
Yeah.
and you need to start acting like that. And there's a
Mhm.
couple of things that you need to consider. Number one is to think about your boss.
Mhm.
And I think this is a very important moment, because your boss, it doesn't matter if they do it because they want to or they were asked to do it. Because sometimes, many times, I also had a situation when I had to ask people to leave the organization.
Mhm. Mhm.
Our former employer was constantly going through the rounds of redundancies, and we
Mhm.
as managers had to make those difficult choices, not
Mhm.
because we wanted to make them, or
Yeah.
we've seen a problem with the performance, but because there was a top-down decision to eliminate
Mhm.
five to five resources from your organization. You have to point to someone.
Yeah.
It's a very difficult decision process. So it's not a question of the intention of the boss, but can you really trust the person? That's going to be, I think, a very crucial question that you should be asking yourself, right?
Mhm.
Right or not?
Yeah, and honestly, I actually had two instances in my 28 years where my role was either made redundant because there was a merger. And so, usually, when you have mergers, either of departments that are similar or of companies, there's two of you, right? And the first time it happened, it was in operate. I was in operations. I was in Costa Rica, even
Mm-hmm.
though I was on a contractual assignment. But in that occasion, I trusted both my bosses, the incoming and the outgoing boss, because their positions were also redundant. And they were also the person that was my boss. So, this is generally what happens in those cases. The person that was my boss was not the one selected. So, basically, pretty much everyone in her team was impacted. That's so the outgoing boss I trusted a lot, and I was able to really get wonderful advice from her. The incoming boss, I knew less, but I had worked with him in a different project because I just had been around for so long. So I did trust him a little bit. And he was actually super transparent and a really good guy and really helped me find another job. He used his network and his influence and the meetings that he was in to say, hey, she's great. She's not the person that I selected because I have someone that, has been with me for X amount of time. I already, whatever his reasons, right? But he was really wonderful because he very quickly mobilized and found me within a week. I had a new job in a completely different area. And that's what a boss that you can trust can do for you. They can really make this process a very good experience, even though it's a negative process. They can make it a good experience.
I've been through this exercise myself 3 times, Renee.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and
Mm-hmm.
the third one was the one when we didn't find
Yeah. Yeah.
the solution for the go forward. We
Mm-hmm.
decided to not to kind of do anything together anymore. But uh, I also want to talk about the kind of experience from the other side uh, of the situation. I was many times in a position when I was a hiring manager at the time of the WFR,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
there are bosses. They might not tell you that, but they will be people that will be calling on your behalf
Yeah.
to others. I had received several calls, and I was able to
Yeah.
pull people out of the WFR,
Yeah.
out of the redundancy, because somebody
Yeah.
called me and said, like, "Hey, I see that you're hiring someone. Take this guy because he's good. Take
Mm-hmm.
this guy because
Mm-hmm.
he
Mm-hmm.
really knows how to do stuff. Okay, he's going to
Mm-hmm.
be a perfect fit for you." And,
Yeah.
and I've seen bosses like that.
Yeah.
Not everybody acts like that, and you guys need to really assess whether you can really trust your boss, your manager, the
Mm-hmm.
person that is your hiring and firing manager,
Yeah.
because they can be very helpful,
Mm-hmm.
but it can also be very problematic for you. They can create you problems and challenges, and can make your exit miserable. Okay.
Yeah. And by the way, for those listening that don't, WFR is workforce reduction. So it's our short acronym for a very long term. Yeah.
Yes. What if you cannot trust your boss? Because you can trust your boss,
Yeah.
there will be a lot of kind of a conversations that you will have with your boss, and he was going to be helping you.
Hmm.
If you cannot trust your boss, and many times you
Yeah.
cannot, and honestly, I've seen very extremely difficult situations for
Yeah.
people, and I've been in very difficult situations.
Yeah.
You need to very quickly find an internal advocate for you,
Hmm.
someone ideally senior, somebody maybe you've met through some projects, somebody very ethical, someone you can
Yeah.
trust, maybe HR or legal.
Hmm.
Those are places you need to find someone who you will be able to turn for advice and a recommendation.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've been in this situation as well where I don't have a boss that I can trust. And I had very good advocates. I had built a very strong network. And even with all of that, was unable, but you get to a certain, the higher you go, the more difficult it is to find a place when you are in a situation like this, whether it's because of salary, whether it's because the companies have almost like a formula, right? The number you want to have certain ratio of managers and executives to the overall population, and sometimes there is organizational sprawl where the organization grows to a certain degree that is out of balance. It has too many executives to employee individual contributor ratio. So and the higher you go, the more
So the
difficult it
hierarchy is
becomes.
getting slimmer,
Yes,
slimmer towards the top. And,
correct,
over time, there's just fewer positions at the top. There's only one
correct,
CEO. So if
correct.
the CEO is being
Yes,
made redundant, he's not going to be another CEO. If you're a
correct.
senior vice president or, executive vice president, there's probably only a handful of them in the
Yeah,
organization. So if one is made redundant, there's very little chance he's going to get another position. So the higher you go, the less chances you have that there's
yeah,
going to be. But this internal advocate, and I don't think I want to be well understood. I don't think this is going to be the person that will find you another job in the organization.
correct,
Remember,
correct.
you have been made redundant. There is a chance that you're going to get another position within the company, but more likely you're
Hmm.
not going to get another position. And you
Hmm.
need somebody who's going to be your, kind of a
Champion, cheerleader.
champion advisor
Yeah,
on your exit strategy.
yeah, yeah,
Especially if you cannot trust your boss, because if you
yeah,
cannot trust your boss, you need to have somebody who's going to be more independent and will give you an independent judgment
yeah.
on things that will, that you would like to, that maybe are possible other than that.
And they can coach you, right? I actually had some wonderful, very senior people that actually had been WFR'd themselves, but I was still in touch with that outside network. They were in higher positions, so they had visibility of what I could or couldn't negotiate, what I could or could not ask for. And I called them, even though they were no longer, and every experience is individual, but I called them for advice and for coaching on what could I negotiate. Did I have the ability to negotiate anything, right? um, and so those people are also important. Don't think that it has to be immediately people that are still in the company. It could be people that have gone through that experience and now are outside of the company, but they were more senior, right? In some cases, for me, it was a number of ex bosses of mine, right?
Find a advocate, because company as such, I
Hmm.
don't think you should be expecting the company to actually act
They're
on your
not.
behalf.
They won't.
I think you need to start assuming the worst,
Hmm.
assuming the worst possible outcome for you. Not because the company has a bad intention, but it's just the machine, okay?
Correct. Correct.
And it has, when there is a layoff, restructuring,
Mhm.
they've already made some of the decisions, and the company as a machine, as an organization, is interested in going through the process as quickly as possible with as few
Mhm.
exceptions as possible.
Mhm.
There are some exceptions possible, but they just want to go and get this done and move on.
Mhm.
And the machine doesn't have the feelings that you do.
Yeah. Yeah. Even though, you might want to see the company and you might have a certain love for the brand and the company, um, even when you're internal and you're not going through this position, people in HR, and I actually always gave my people this advice too, is own your career. And that's the same advice that applies to this. Own your exit. Own your exit and own your next step. No one else can do it for you. No one else is going to have as much interest in making sure that you land as much as they might appreciate you. But you have to own it. And in these 2 weeks, it's going to be so hard because you might be tempted to be in this catatonic state of shock that this has happened to you. And you cannot let that freeze you. You cannot let that paralyze you into inaction because the 2 weeks flies, and the 2 week window is critical because that's when you're going to have access to still to some internal job systems and some internal conversations and opportunities. And the 2 weeks really goes by fast. So one of the things that Magic and I were talking about when we were preparing for this, and I'm not sure if it's in the bullets or not, but it's just like, you can fall apart later. Right, but right now you can't afford to fall apart,
That
right?
that's important. That's important. I think you need to start acting, right?
Yeah.
If you can trust your boss, great.
Hmm.
If not, find another advocate, because you need to start. You need to assume the worst. You need to
Yeah.
start, kind of taking care of yourself, really.
Hmm.
uh, and don't accept everything that has been given to you, because
Yeah.
you always will be able to negotiate something.
Yeah.
Could be an extra coaching, some extended access. Maybe you can take some of the office equipment that you had at home.
Hmm.
There are some exceptions. I would say, Renee, that in this moment, it's important to think through things that are easy, or no cost for the organization, for the company,
Yeah.
that the company can easily give away to
Hmm.
you.
Hmm.
There is this kind of there is still a willingness to help you,
Yeah.
especially if you have a good, trustworthy boss. he's
Yeah.
going to be he's going to help you to he's going to give you some of those little exceptions.
Hmm.
If not, you can ask your trusted advisor, advocate, whether this is worth asking for.
Hmm.
And many
Hmm.
times it might be like, something that doesn't cost the company a lot, to
Yeah.
keep you on the benefits list,
Hmm.
or to let you use the company assets, or give you an extra coaching or outplacement, or what name you,
Yeah.
while you're going through the very difficult period of career change.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
So once you've done your mindset reset, and you understood that you are no longer an employee, the next thing that you need to do is stop performing, stop doing your job.
Hmm.
Okay, this is super important, because I've been a victim of the same problem, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Oh, me too. This is my biggest regret, and we'll get into it in a minute. But yeah.
You are no longer an employee. This is no longer your job. Okay,
Hmm.
I mean, the message is very clear. And at this point in time, your, I don't know, KPIs, you don't have to deliver anything anymore. You're not expected to deliver anything
Hmm.
anymore to the company.
Yeah. Yeah, a couple of things, right? I think one of the things that when Magic talks about KPIs or key performance indicators, as leaders, there's some performance indicators that we get, like employee engagement is a performance indicator. In your quota,
Oh,
if you're on
yeah, your
sales, your
quota.
quota
Yeah.
attainment, your expense management, right? Are you within your expense? And one of the things that was shocking for me is like I've always exceeded my KPIs. How could this be happening to me, right? And again, that's where that fall apart later and question all of that later comes into play because you just don't have time for that. But this is my biggest regret because the moment that I got my notification, instead of really focusing on maybe finding another role or just things for me, I still kept doing my job. And furthermore, I put together this 25-page transition document with where to find things, where certain programs were, different processes that basically were in my head, and I wanted to set up the next person for success. And that was my mistake. Instead of setting myself up for success, I was worried about setting the next person up for success and making sure that my team, I mean, I'm always going to look out for my team, right? But I did it at the sacrifice of my own well-being, right? And so this is the
Your
thing I would
time,
say.
your time, Renee, because I remember your
Yeah,
document. You shared
yeah,
that with me, and
yeah,
it was extremely comprehensive.
yeah.
I am not. Do you think it was used by anyone?
No, no, I really don't. And I think that, when I look back on it, I probably did it more for myself and my own ego of saying I exited. It was the only thing I felt at the time I could control. And so when I really look back on it, it was just a waste of time, honestly. And I could have used my time in better ways to help me. So
It's a feeling that you will have trying to
yeah,
document everything that you do,
yeah,
that you've done,
yeah,
things that are in motion and have to be continued because you feel the ownership of the stuff that you've
right.
been doing for the last, I don't know how many months or years or what name
Mm-hmm.
you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But seriously, that's maybe the new person that will come is not going
Mm-hmm.
to be interested in continuing what you've done. Maybe even the whole department is gone.
They,
And
they they absolutely don't want to continue what you were doing because in their mind it's likely, well, this is if you were fired, right? You couldn't have been doing such a great job, so why would I take any advice from you? Again, they don't know the details of why you were let go or not. So, but that's going to be the automatic perception, right?
that's going to be in your mind.
Right.
But even I would even say more, Rene. You might be asked as a person that is kind of leaving the organization to prepare a documentation.
Mhm.
Okay,
Mhm.
and I think it's fair to prepare something. I don't
Yeah.
think that you should burn the bridges and just say like I'm not going to do anything.
Mhm.
But just make sure that you give a certain direction or points or overall topics,
Yeah.
because once you hand it over to your boss,
Mhm.
he could ask more questions.
Yeah.
He can
Yeah.
call you even after the exit, especially if
Yeah.
there's someone that you can trust.
Yeah.
They can always find you and ask you for additional information. Once you've been out of the organization, they'll
Mhm.
find a way to contact you if they need more
Yeah.
support. More, there's so many ways of contacting you and asking you, for
Mhm.
more information. But you're
Yeah.
not gonna buy back time that you
Mhm.
have spent putting too much,
Yeah.
too detailed documentation just
Yeah.
because you're. And I think it comes from a documentation of what I've done,
Mhm.
and how, why those programs are so important. They
Yeah.
most likely are not going to buy you back your position in the
Correct.
organization.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
So our advice is instantaneously set an out of office auto reply.
Yep.
Just tell everyone, my position has been made redundant, or if you want to be a little bit
Whatever you
softer.
agree with your boss, because you also don't wanna risk your severance, but yeah, set an
Oh
out
yeah,
of
yeah, yeah.
office, right?
Say
Yep.
like, hey, I'm on an extended leave or
Right.
whatever the thing is. Here is the new person to talk to. Point it to
Correct.
the person that should be, responding to the inquiries while you
Mhm.
are preparing your exit. Okay.
Right. Right.
Stop chasing those KPIs.
Yes. Yeah.
uh,
Thankfully, I
if you
didn't worry about that, but yeah.
Well, if you have a deal that you need to,
To
if
close.
to close
Yeah.
because it's going to impact
Commission.
your commission.
Yeah.
But honestly saying, like it might be that the company will think that whatever you closed after you've been made redundant doesn't
Mhm.
belong to you anyway.
Correct. Correct.
And I don't know if how is it in different countries, legally, whether you can
Mhm.
claw back some of this money or not.
Mhm.
It's typically a lengthy process and doesn't make any.
Mhm.
Well, it's going to be problematic. So just shift
Difficult.
your
Yeah.
basically shift your energy to prepare your exit and building your new presence. Just completely,
Mhm.
absolutely, totally focus on your next
Yeah.
move, what you're
Mhm.
gonna do next. I
Mhm.
think that's
Yeah.
very, very critical.
Absolutely agree.
Absolutely agree. What are the things that you should be doing? I think that's a we said what you shouldn't do, but
Mhm.
what are the things that you should be doing?
Yeah. This is
Mm,
my favorite slide, I would say. One of the things that I know helped me a lot, and you and I have spoken about this, and you share a similar sentiment. You served as my support system in many, many ways, and it was so valuable to me to be able to call you, um, either suffer together or brainstorm together, which is actually where we spent the most of our time.
yeah.
Was okay, let's prepare a go to market strategy for ourselves, for our persona, for our brand. And I think helping each other really was crucial. And that step of don't isolate yourself, especially when you have layoffs in corporate America that are multiple people, many different, there'll be plenty of people that you can find to buddy up with. But don't, do this uh, with someone. I'm going to connect this to a reference, for Alcoholics Anonymous or drug addicts. I'm a child of an alcoholic, and so I've been to a lot of, in the U.S. it's called Al-Anon, which is adult children of alcoholics. And one of the ways, or one of the proven methods for addicts or alcoholics to not fall back into addiction, not fall off the wagon, which is what they call it, is when they help another addict recover. So teaming up and being together with someone, or sponsoring someone through the process and finding someone that can help you and work with you is absolutely essential to your successful recovery from being let go or separating from the company.
And I think the key message is not to get isolated because
Hmm.
and I try to always reach out to people. When I've learned that somebody has been made redundant for many years
Yes.
now, I always try to give them a call and ask how they are, because
Hmm.
I knew that it's very difficult. Even now, when I hear about somebody leaving HPE, I try to give them a call and just say,
Yeah.
ask what's going on. And some people, and I respect that, okay,
Hmm.
don't get me wrong, I respect that some people will say, like, I don't want to talk right now, I need
Yeah.
to kind of sit down and process it and whatever,
Hmm.
and some people really need that. But
Hmm.
as soon as you can, open up,
Hmm.
because honestly saying, again, there's this kind of those 2 weeks, critical weeks, you can fall apart later.
Yeah.
After you've left the company, after your email stops working,
Hmm.
after you lose the access, yes, that's going to be the moment when you can take, I don't know, 6 months of vacation if you want,
Yeah.
if you really need it. Okay.
Hmm.
Kind of pull yourself together and don't isolate yourself.
Yeah.
Start calling people, start networking, start building your, like, refreshing your network or building a new network. And
Hmm.
I actually advocate that
Yeah.
you should be starting externally first rather than
Hmm.
internally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, this is I would say another thing that I would do over, since this is the podcast of looking back, what would we have done differently? Listen, right? The company had been in my life since I was 9 years old. Most of you that are familiar with me know that my mom was an HP employee in Puerto Rico. And I walked into the first HP sales office when I was 9 years old. So my immediate reaction was to cling to what was familiar and what I knew, which was staying with the company. And I focused 150,000% of my energy trying to find another job internally, even if it was a job one or two levels below the level that I was. I was very happy to take a demotion. I was willing to take a salary cut just to stay with the company because it's what I had known forever, right?
Mhm.
And that is one thing that I would absolutely do differently. I would have immediately put as much energy, if not more, into searching outside of the company.
Yes. Think about this, guys, and I have been with Compaq HP and HP for 25 years, so my network internally was massive. Okay, I knew a lot of people internally, even people that were extremely friendly to me, my good friends for many years. They can't help you, especially if they are not senior vice president or executive vice president has maybe an opening, and can you are a good fit, you happen to be a good fit. 'Cause I don't think in those large organizations people will hire you just because they feel friendly with you. You need to be at least a 80% fit for the role to be pulled into it. Okay, uh, especially during the massive WFR, so workforce reduction exercises. Nobody's going to be creating a job specifically for you. Unlikely, very very unlikely. Happens, but very 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 unlikely. So internally, people, they might want to help you, but they will not be able to, especially if your boss is not a trustworthy person. Any help that they offer to you, you can get a retaliation from your boss, and they are a little bit of a afraid of this. They might be willing to help you but not be able to help you, if you know what I mean, in a fear for them losing the job. Though the other people as well in the organization that will be, and this is, prepare for this. Okay, the moment the announcement about my exit went out internally, there were a number of people, and I'm not going to name the names, but they know who they are, who stopped responding to my emails. They used to call me on my birthday and wish me happy birthday and say, you are a great friend of mine, whatever, share the secrets with me. The moment, that it was official that I'm no longer a vice president and a general manager, and I tried to talk to them about one or the other thing, that's it. They stopped answering the phone. Get ready for this. There will be some people like that, and I don't want to judge them. Maybe they are afraid to respond to my
Yeah.
email or phone. Maybe they're just bad people, and I didn't know about it. For some of them, I expected that.
Mhm.
Expect that. So externally, many times, kind of a networking externally, especially with people who've left the
Mhm.
organization, people who are your industry friends. If you're working for a vendor, call your distribution partners and the channel partners. If you're a distribution, call the partners, call the vendors. Just people externally, past colleagues, past bosses. I think, Renee, you, you
Yeah.
you spoke about
Yep.
bosses.
Mhm.
That is your new network. Anybody out there can give you advice, recommendation, reference,
Yep.
helping advice. You can expect a lot from them.
Yeah. The other thing that I found super helpful, and this may be more applicable to earlier career people, but I would say you can start this at any time. Um, I moved in different circles, right? In 2012, I got certified as a John Maxwell coach. In I was in about 2011 through 2020. I was an alumni at Capella University. I got my master's and I got my doctorate. I was also a graduate from Northeastern University. So when you look at my LinkedIn, Magic and I were doing work with a couple of universities. And when you look at my LinkedIn, I have network circles in different places. That was super helpful because um, I wasn't limited only to my ex people within the company that were had left, or people within the job, what they knew me. I had people that knew me in different circles. Yes, always somewhat related to the persona that I had at my employer, but also they knew that there was more to me than that. And that was super helpful as well. So build your network in different places. I was a member of the Women of the Channel, Women in Technology. And these are circles that extend way beyond your employer. So try to make sure your network has diversity.
Absolutely. And to be honest, Renee, and this is the second kind of a area, I need to say that I start. One thing that I do regret, okay, is that I started to go externally, to events and groups, uh, a little bit too late. I should have done it much faster, like going to the B2SMB event, going to the events from Google, Microsoft, the distribution, ConnectWise IT Nation, all those events. I waited until my job was done. I should have done it, almost the next day after. I should have looked at the different events that I could attend.
After you
Because
put your out of office, you should have done that.
absolutely,
Yes.
no, no,
Yeah.
no. I
Yeah.
wasted couple of weeks, couple of months actually, not being active externally. Okay, I was posting a little bit on LinkedIn. I was kind of a offline talking to some people and connecting with people, but I didn't go like all in out all out on the not on the job market, on the industry market, I would
Correct.
say.
Correct.
And honestly saying, there are people that helped me a lot to understand my next kind of a step and next
Hmm.
ideas
Hmm.
that were from my previous, kind of a circles and the people that I met previously.
Yeah.
But there were so many people that I've just met in January, February, March, like maybe 6, 7 months after I left uh, my previous job, and I was actually out of the organization after the gardening leave. I've
Hmm.
met some new people, and they were very sympathetic to
Hmm.
my story, my skills, what I wanted to do, and they offered help that was, I want to say, free of charge in a
Yeah.
way. They
Yeah.
didn't expect anything from me immediately.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay, so you can ask. I mean, I always tell my kids, you can ask. The worst thing that will happen is somebody will say no.
Yeah.
If you don't
Hmm.
ask, you're not better off.
Hmm.
Okay, if you ask, you at least have a chance to get something in return. Okay,
Hmm. Hmm.
so attend event, join groups, post on LinkedIn. um, and the next thing is like ask for referrals, informational calls. Not specific about the job leads, because it's not about the job
Yeah.
leads necessary immediately there is a job around the corner, but there are options, ideas, concept, things that can give you an opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I have some wonderful women that, again, I'm not going to name names because I don't want people to feel um, one way or another. But I had these wonderful women who immediately embraced me and said, "Come to this event, come to that event, be a guest speaker at my event. I'll cover your travel." Amazing. Amazing ways to help me bounce back and recover. And these were external women that were in these networks that I had met through women in technology, right? And they were just outstanding. And they, by the way, they continue to be outstanding. They have continued to be mentors, supporters, people that I reach out to, whenever I need something. And not just women. This week, I actually spoke to a CIO in New York that was big customer and of one of our resellers, and I actually engaged with him in one of our industry events. In passing, we met in the hallway, and we have bonded since then. And he has been a wonderful advocate in a circle that I wouldn't have had access to, because I'm not a CIO or a CTO, and he has access to these networks. And so you never know, right? There's a lot of people, be good to people, and there's a lot of people that are out there and very creative in ways in which they can help support you.
Yes. So really focus externally and reach out to people. And don't and one thing that I learned over the months is don't focus on justification why you've left and whether
Yeah,
it was mutual
or
or
not.
you were made redundant. It doesn't matter really.
Hmm.
Honestly, you might not think that, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I've met people, they were telling me the stories how they decided to leave on their own.
Hmm.
Maybe they did.
Yeah.
It's it doesn't matter. Seriously,
Yeah,
it does
and
not. It
I
doesn't
understand the
matter.
instinct. Yeah, I understand the instinct, right? Because it can be embarrassing. It can be, you might carry feelings of shame or guilt, or it's almost like you, if you caught a disease, and it's just like but it
No, no,
doesn't
but
matter.
it's a focus. Like
Yeah.
Renee, that I when they started to tell me the story why they left,
Hmm.
I was trying to politely cut the discussion and
Yeah.
say, look, doesn't matter,
It's
okay?
in the
I don't want
past.
to. I
Yeah.
honestly,
Yeah.
I don't want to hear your story because you
Yeah.
might be telling me this true story, or you might be telling me the story that you want me to believe in, okay?
Right. Right.
You might be telling me the story because there is your frustration, or there must be all the
Yeah.
different reasons.
Hmm.
Stop. Don't tell people why you left and what was behind your exit. Tell people what are the things that you are thinking about doing next. You want to go and do something else? Tell them. You want to do the same that you've been doing. You want to focus. You've been responsible for SMB. You want to continue working on SMB. Tell them, SMB is my passion. Channel is my passion. Or maybe it's the IT that is your passion. Or maybe you want to completely switch. You've always dreamt of, I don't know, going into arts or attending events or starting to be a speaker or teacher. Doesn't matter. Just tell them your
Future
future
focused.
story, your future
Yeah.
focus, and things. Just skip. And even if they ask, some of the people I know, it's like, hey, how was it? Try to move on from this and say like, hey, it really doesn't matter why I
It's in the
left.
past. Yeah.
It's, I,
Yeah.
it will also help you mentally
Move
to
on.
shift your focus and move on, not
Hmm.
dwell on the past, because
Hmm.
that's typical. Normally, unless you're talking about people who want to gossip a lot, that's normally very boring for for people that want to help you. They really want to help you to with the things that you want to do next, not with the kind of a grief that you had in the past. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, that's a different, if you need that type of support, that's a different support group. That's a different
Yeah,
discussion.
yeah.
Yeah.
Call your friends.
Yeah.
Great to have
Your
a
spouse.
your
Yeah.
spouse.
Or
I
your
mean, family is
partner.
extremely
Yeah.
important. Family
Hmm.
is extremely important. I need to thank
Yeah.
my wife
Yeah.
because she's been a great support for
Yes.
me. After the exit,
Hmm.
really, without her, I would go
Yeah. Yeah.
mad
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah.
And she was extremely supportive of me. And if you
Yeah.
have a spouse, wife or husband or
Yeah.
a very close friend or
Yeah.
partner, mom, dad,
Yeah.
that's the people that you can go and cry on their shoulder.
Yeah.
For everybody else, don't put a brave face on, just put a future face on.
Right. Right. Right.
Talk to
Yes.
them. Okay. What else to do before you exit? There is a very important tech exit checklist that you need to go through.
No kidding, right? Yeah.
Especially for you and I, Renee, we've been with a company for such a long
Yeah.
time. You know,
Mhm.
our personal life was intertwined with
Yeah.
the organization. Okay,
Yeah.
and I think some people don't appreciate it, that you are going to lose access to everything. So
Mhm. Mhm.
if you've been keeping some of your documents on the internal OneDrive, or if you've been using your company email to access some of the I don't know, some of the resources like your bank account, you've been getting the
Or your
statement.
United Airlines points, that was a big one for me, right? Or your Hilton Honors points, because to me that was always kind of somewhat related to work. So I used my work email address, and it was on our profile, on our travel profile, and so yeah, those types of things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This is like, there's no way, and it's, again, it's nothing that is against you. It's just the company policy will be the last day of your employment is the last day that your email is active. And if you go back and say like, hey, I forgot to change it, nobody's going to reactivate it for you. Nobody's going to look inside your mailbox to check whether there are emails to reset your password or what name you. So there's very important couple of things that you need to do before, like, once before your access is gone. I always advise people to buy a new laptop.
Yeah, thankfully for me, right, when I very early on when I was doing my master's, I'm a big fan of Macintosh, and the company issued laptop was always Windows based, because the corporate security protocols are better on a Windows platform, supposedly. So I thankfully had my own laptop for years, for more than 15 of the 28 years that I was with the company. So this wasn't super difficult for me. But I remember Magic going through a couple of purchases and his laptop not always, yeah, working correctly or not liking
Honestly
it.
saying,
Yeah.
I would on a bring your own device program. So I also didn't have the company.
Issued. Hmm.
I had a Windows PC and I still use a Windows PC, but
That's another
I
difference
never.
between Magic and I. That's a separate episode. We'll do a Windows versus Mac. Yeah.
But I never liked, because I started as a category manager for notebooks, and I always had the choice to choose something that I liked. When I was a notebook category manager, I was always choosing the funny thing. I got used to it, and ever since the first day at the company, I was always choosing the laptop that I liked, which 90% of the cases was not the one that was on the corporate list of the
I'm
of the
sure
note.
IT loved you. The corporate IT team probably hated
Oh,
you.
that was fine. There was a program bringing out IT. Even though I had this, supposingly I had my own thing, I was thinking, look, I don't know with the current kind of a setup and how things are set up, if there is no way for my company to lock me out of things, just because the laptop I've been using this laptop for so many things. And guess what? On many of the dimensions, things that I had on a laptop that I was using to do to do the business, things stopped working because there was company issued antivirus software. There was a
Hmm.
company issued. I had to install it. That was like
Right.
obligatory. I had to
Right.
install certain things on my private laptop because it was used for the company business.
Hmm.
So I went. I bought a new laptop. Like
Hmm.
almost
Brand
day
new.
one.
Yeah.
And I started to work on my new laptop almost day one. Start slowly getting used to using another machine that was not in any way, shape, or form connected to the corporate network. I just made sure that my corporate email was not installed on this machine. It was just a clean slate. machine, without any connections to my former employer. And I
Mm-hmm.
kept the other laptop, and eventually when I made an exit and a transition after a couple of months, I just wiped it
Reformat
off
it.
and gave
Go.
it to my daughter,
Yeah.
uh, because I no longer needed that. But
Mm-hmm.
that's what I've done, and I think that was the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I even I even got some calls from HP after the exit, because apparently my old laptop that I was using for work was trying to connect to the network or something, and they were like, "Hey, you shouldn't be doing it." I, honestly saying, I just wiped it off, just to
Mm-hmm.
avoid this kind of a conversations. But
Yep.
to wipe it off, I was happy to have my other one that I've been using for
Yeah.
a couple of months, already, and I didn't have to restart anything, abruptly. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so no matter if you are using your own laptop or you have a company issued device, buy a new laptop, and the same goes for your phone. Buy a new
Yeah.
phone. Uh, this is going to be also, phones are subject to a corporate IT policy now. Even if
Mm-hmm.
it's your private iPhone, it will have something installed on it.
Mm-hmm.
It will join the domain or whatever. I don't know what kind of, there'll be different companies having a different policy.
Yeah.
It's better to have a new one that has never touched your employer.
Yeah.
Believe me, that's true.
Yeah. Yeah. Thankfully, again, in the US, I had my own phone hardware. The one thing that I did keep was my actual phone number, but I
That's the
had,
one.
that's the next one.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I did have to port that over. And there was a special process that I went through with my carrier to get off the company plan into my personal plan. And that was I would say that that was one of the adjustments. And I really did want to keep that number because I've had that number for over 20 years. And so, yeah, it
I
was
also had
important.
to move to the. I had to. It was a company phone. The phone that I had was a company phone, and I also had it for I don't know how many years. They just handed it over to me. They transferred the number to me,
Yep.
which was
Hmm.
the standard company policy.
Yep.
It- You transfer to your private plan. Typically, at least with me, it was a transfer to a prepaid card.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
and then from a prepaid card, I could transfer to a plan, to a subscription service in my
Hmm.
own name.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um,
That's different than in the US. For me, it was
yes,
just, yeah, a
and
port
I would recommend
over.
do it as soon as possible,
Yeah.
because
It takes a few days.
it takes some time.
Yeah.
When there is a problem, and there will be a problem, I guarantee you there will be a problem, then you're still being an employee, you still have a possibility to contact IT, to talk to them about this. IT will talk to the service provider to solve any problems for you. So you want, because not once you're out, nobody's going to help you. Nobody is going to move a finger, even if your phone
Hmm.
didn't port correctly, if
Yep.
you are not receiving any calls, if there's like 15 other things, you're on your own. When
Hmm.
you're still within the company, you can still go back to your IT and then say, like, look, you've been doing the port of the or transfer of the phone number to me, it didn't work, there is a problem, yada yada, whatever. There's still an option for you. So do it as early as possible. Transfer to your private plan. Choose your plan wisely. I was, like, one of the tips is, I very quickly discovered that I can add my phone number to my overall home internet,
Provider.
kind of a package,
Hmm.
and it costed me peanuts, and has 99% of the functionalities that the corporate phone had.
Hmm.
Maybe if I travel to China, it's going to be very expensive.
Yeah.
There's a flat fee with HPE,
Hmm.
but I was able to set up everything in a way that is very. I don't feel a difference.
Hmm.
Yeah, but
Hmm.
I did it early enough.
Yeah.
Um, Another recommendation: set up a professional email. Could
Oh
be your
my
phone.
God, how many people make this mistake or have an email back when it was like hotmail.com. And it's
Yeah.
like, no, you don't
No,
want
no,
that,
no.
right? Or they had some instead of their name, last name, it was some, fun guy at whatever. And it's like, no, 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 no.
No, no,
Don't do
no.
that. Yeah.
Put a professional. You can
Mhm.
buy your own. I recommend that you actually buy your own domain.
Mhm.
Figure it out. Could be your lastname.com. It's probably taken by now, but
Yep.
there's a lot of things. My domain is
Yep.
gowithmagic.com.
Mhm.
I
Yep.
own several other domains, to be
Me too.
honest.
Me too. I have a number of them. Thankfully, I there's not a lot of Renee Pizarros in the world. And so for me, it was very easy, right? Renee Pizarro at gmail.com is my basic one that I've had, I don't know, forever. But I have a number of other ones too. Yeah. Yeah.
So seriously,
Yeah.
I think this is very important, and it has to be a professional email. Why professional email? Not only because it has. So first of all, it has to be professional because it has to look professional,
Hmm.
but also if you are setting it up on a free domain, many times this free domain could be on a list of spam, so you'll be sending
Yeah.
your CV to people, and they will, and you'll end up in their spam folder.
Hmm.
uh, for some of the registrations, if you want to register for a newsletter or an event or whatever,
Yeah.
they won't accept a non-professional email
Hmm.
address.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, some hotmail.com or something like that. They might not respect that as an actual one.
Yeah.
And I think the last on my list of exit checklist is migrating
Yes.
your personal data. I'm not advocating that anybody should steal any IP from your employer.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
Okay, don't do that.
Yeah.
Don't grab your, like the numbers, like the customer list or whatever.
Yeah. Don't
That's
do
not what
any of
I'm
that.
talking about.
Yeah.
I'm not talking. What you need to do is go and take and think about what is your personal data. There are many emails that you have received, personal emails that people have sent to your
Work
company
address.
address.
Hmm.
You, I believe you can take them with you.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. If it has nothing to do with the company, right? If it's like, I don't know, let's say you were taking a course, a certification course to improve your skills in speaking or in writing, or sometimes you go through executive leadership courses that, you might have a certificate or whatever it might, those are things that are yours, right? Your personal evaluations from work, if those are interesting to you, right? Those things definitely is what we're
Yes.
referring to.
So emails, I think, I believe things like your performance reviews that you have received, your HR reports, that
Yeah.
are personal to you.
Mhm.
You can download a copy and have a copy, your
Yep.
compensation history,
Yep.
your reward points. I would actually spend them as soon as possible. You probably
Yeah.
shouldn't download them.
Yeah.
Travel accounts, I don't know, long-term incentive documentation.
Hmm.
There's a lot of kind of information that is only uh, accessible internally. Think about any internal system that has your personal or data about you,
Hmm.
personally,
Yeah.
that you would like to keep, and download it as soon as you can,
Yeah.
because that's going to be could be helpful for you. If you have, I don't know, preferable performance reviews that could serve as a great stories for your CV. I'm
Yeah.
not saying that you should be sending your internal performance review to your future employers, right?
No.
That's not the direction, but the data, the information in those performance review you could remember that, okay, in 2015 I have overachieved the quota by 150%, or there was a significant market share gain, or I won those 5 great accounts for
Hmm. Hmm.
$5 million. That's all important information that you can use on your CV, and it could have been in your performance review
Yeah.
as a you know appreciation of the good job that you've done for the company.
Or your job history, right? For people like us that spent pretty much our entire career in one company, it almost sometimes is like you forget when you started and when you ended one particular role. Like if you were, I don't know, North America ABC and you moved to worldwide 123, you may not remember exactly the month and the year. So when you're building your resume, you're like, when did I do that again? So that's why that job history of when you got promoted or when you moved to a role from a different role, those things are in the internal records that you want to take, because you're going to need that to build your resume, to make sure that your LinkedIn profile is accurate, all those types of things. You really, I remember when this occurred, like I hadn't built an external resume in 28 years. Right. So
And,
it's important.
and that's an important point,
Yes.
because you should be
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
you should be looking at updating your CV and your LinkedIn. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I want to say, Renee, many people treat it as a bit of a scam,
Mm-hmm.
but I would use a professional CV writer
Mm-hmm.
to update your CV. Not
Mm-hmm.
because you cannot write, but because they have a way of expressing I mean, ChatGPT now helps a lot. I
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah. 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 But they have emotional distance from
Correct.
you, and they're able to represent you in a more objective way in your resume or CV or LinkedIn profile that you yourself can't, because you have these emotional blind spots about yourself, right?
Exactly. So I would go, and we're not gonna advertise anyone, but you can
No.
find probably a lot of, you can ask me offline if you want.
Yeah.
You can send me a direct message, on LinkedIn, or what name you. I'm happy to share with you who I used. I was reasonably happy with them.
Mhm.
Uh, and then go for anything that is useful for your LinkedIn. This kind of a CV, professionally written
Yeah.
CV, could help you also to restructure your LinkedIn, put a new
Mhm.
headline,
Yeah.
summary, clear direction. I think what is super important is not necessarily, recommendations are important, but I think what is super important is to get a new headshot,
Yeah.
new 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 pictures.
New
Um,
branding pictures for sure. Mhm.
yes, you will find a lot of pictures that maybe your employer has has done for you
Mhm.
that will probably be outdated.
Yeah.
They might have
The
a
company
logo,
branding. Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
and a company branding, or some
Mhm.
kind of a company way of doing it.
Yeah.
I went, and again, I called my friends and I've asked them, what kind of do they have anybody to recommend, and I used a great guy
Mhm.
uh, to do a professional photo session. And I'm
Yep.
not saying somebody came and made a picture. They actually prepared like a
Yeah.
real setup for it. There was a lady who did like
Makeup,
the
hair.
makeup.
Yep.
Yeah, even for me, for a man, I had a makeup for the,
Yeah.
I don't know, probably third time in my life. And
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and it helped to do great pictures, that I'm
Mhm.
using ever since, and I'm super happy with them.
Mhm.
Uh, and I recommend to everyone to do something similar as well. So take care of, it's your new branding, it's your
Yeah.
new branding. You need to disconnect yourself from your employer
Yeah. It's an
completely. Not,
investment. It's an investment on yourself, right?
yeah,
It's not going to be a couple of $100s, right? Especially, I know I did like Magic a full day session. It was a
yeah,
couple of $1,000s, but it was
yes.
money well spent because it was a full day of sessions. I had over 80 different shots that I still haven't used all of them 2 years later. So it was money really, really well invested in making sure that, my brand was the way I wanted it to be.
Your personal brand,
My
right?
personal
Your
brand.
personal
Correct.
brand.
Correct.
There are many resources out there. Uh, you are not alone in this in this
No.
exercise. We spoke about um, how you can reach out. I want to say, Renee, there's something called, many employees offer so-called outplacement services.
Mhm.
I don't know. What's your opinion about the outplacement services?
I used them when they were provided to me. Um, it was it was good to get a perspective, but it was very mechanical is the way I would characterize it, right? Um, and it was almost like they were going through their own checklist to get it to get it out of the way or get it said like, okay, it got done. So I wouldn't say that I don't feel that that's what helped me in any way. But I used it because you never know, right? It depends if you have. I had two different people that I spoke to, and one of them was really good. And gave me some interesting tips, but eh, you know, I I would use them because the company provided it, they paid for it, and gosh darn it, I was going to use every bit of help. But yeah,
It's one of the resources.
yeah,
I would say don't treat it as the only resource.
correct.
Because honestly
Yeah.
saying, some of this, again, with outplacement services, I found them very similar to the overall,
Hmm.
you know, workforce reduction process. It's
Hmm.
made for the 80% of the cases,
Yeah.
uh, pretty mechanical, relatively mechanical. The person that worked with me was really good.
Hmm.
I really liked her.
Hmm.
Uh, she was extremely helpful.
Hmm.
Uh, I would say to help to maybe reset my mind a little bit on a number of things, but I did not find it, especially the outplacement service. To be honest, was not really ready for the international career
Hmm.
type of
Hmm.
thing. If I
Hmm.
would be a manager from Poland, maybe that would be more useful. But
Appropriate. Yeah.
from an international career point of view, I don't think it was that useful. I
Hmm.
think there are other interesting resources. I think that there are LinkedIn groups.
Hmm.
There's one that I'm putting here, and maybe I'll put them later on in the comments or in the
Yeah.
in the description of the video. Uh, it's a it's just an example of ex HPE employees
Yeah.
group on LinkedIn. They give you a lot of kind of recommendations on how to protect your medical plan, how to
Hmm.
take advantage of your long-term incentives. Go through this, join those groups, ask people, ask, for help, ask for information. There will be a lot of people that will be happy to give you a hand. Yeah.
Yeah. And there are two people that I will put in the comments once we publish this. One is a career slash life coach that I would recommend blindly because he also is someone that was an ex HPE executive. So he has an interesting point of view for that. So it was really relevant to me. And he's just phenomenal. And he has a coaching partner. And I would recommend them, any day of the week because they really just understood some of the backstory and the background by having worked for the same company, being laid off by the same company. So I will put that on the comments. And the other person that I will recommend is my financial advisor. He's limited to the US, so he can't advise outside of the US. But that was probably the second call that I made was to my financial advisor to move all of my money. I'm very fond of my money. Right? There's nothing wrong with money, and I'm very protective of the money that I worked very hard to make. And he works in U.S. and a little bit in Latin America. So I will recommend him as well. I'll put him in the comments on LinkedIn and in YouTube. I'll put their links to their pages because these are two people that are phenomenal, both ex HPE employees. So they have good perspective of the kind of how to navigate some of those specific things that I think people will find helpful.
Mentors, kind of call your
Hmm.
ex-mentors, coaches, peers, like I'm also gonna attach my executive coach.
Hmm.
That was my executive coach from HPE when I was still at HPE, and when I left, I don't remember if I reached out to him or he reached out to
Mm-hmm.
me. I, 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 I mean, again, he was charging the company big bucks
Mm-hmm.
to be my executive coach. I'm pretty sure.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't charge me big bucks. He just offered help,
Mm-hmm.
genuine help and advice when I left. I'm Mark. I'm super thankful to you for always having time for me when I really needed it most. Which after I left the organization. So please reach out to this kind of people, your coaches, mentors, um, senior executives that left the company. They typically offer. I'm happy to, if you want to chat. I specifically put a Calendly link
Yeah.
on my LinkedIn. Just book some time with me.
Mm-hmm.
Happy to have a separate conversation with you if you want.
Yep.
Share my experience, advice, recommendations, whatever I can. I feel for you, and I wanna help you.
Yeah, the same thing for me, right? It's right on my LinkedIn profile. The first 30 minutes are for free. And then after that, we'll have to arrange kind of what's the best plan. I have a couple of different plans that can fit your budget, can fit your intention, right? Um, so we can definitely do that.
Been talking for 1 hour 15 minutes, Renee. So some closing thoughts, okay?
Yes, yes, and we we might have to divide this into part one, part two, so that people that don't have maybe a whole hour, but we'll see. We'll see. We'll provide different versions, different shorts, different versions. Yeah, some closing thoughts. I would say 2 years and change later. Um, I am very, very grateful. I am certainly wiser. I am much happier. I mean, we didn't spend a lot of time talking about some of the other things that happen, right? There's definitely a detox period, an emotional, mental. I learned a lot about maybe how unbalanced my life was because I had spent so much time and energy focused on work, work, work. And so there's a whole host of things that I got to work on, and some of them we may come up as we continue to do the series. And if you want to listen to those things, please make sure that you follow us, that you like, that you share. Also send us your questions, and we'll certainly be happy to address them. Hopefully by now you've gotten the message that Magic and I are very candid, and we will pretty much address any question that you have very happily.
Absolutely. Again, in the US, especially in the US, if you are based in the US, your time to exit is going to be extremely short. Okay.
Very fast.
So again, you can fall apart later. And in
Hmm.
our
Yes.
subsequent episode, we'll talk about this emotional journey and the
Hmm.
problems, the challenges that you might be facing
Yep.
because you've spent 20 years with the company.
Hmm.
I feel for a lot of people from Microsoft, many
Yeah.
of them 30 years career, more than I
Yeah.
spent with Compaq HP and HPE, and they have to leave, and there might be a lot of bitterness. But
Hmm.
again, really, it doesn't matter. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter. It
Yeah.
shouldn't matter. I know it sounds very harsh, but your focus should be on the future.
Yeah.
And if you will spend those 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 5 weeks or 2 months just falling apart, then you're gonna regret that. Okay,
Hmm. Yeah.
so make sure uh, that you spend time. For those of you who went through this process and are watching this video, this conversation, maybe you could also give us some tips on what you wish
Yeah. You would have
you'd
done
know,
differently. Yeah.
you would have done, because maybe we missed something. Rena and I, we missed something. We've been preparing for this discussion, but maybe we missed something. Maybe there are some tips that you would like to share. Put them in the
Mhm.
comments. If you wanna do them unofficially, send them
Yeah.
via
Anonymously. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, send them to us.
We won't
We
share.
will be able to we will be able to post it, maybe,
Yeah.
but we will not reveal your name.
Right.
If
Right.
that's your suggestion. I don't know if you can post anonymously, not on LinkedIn for sure. Maybe on YouTube.
No, 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 no. But you can direct message us. with your thoughts and let us know that you want to remain anonymous, and then we'll just be your voice, right? If you feel that you're not in a position to freely share yet for whatever reasons, and we're happy to do that.
Yes, and again, share, comment, like, subscribe, follow.
The whole thing.
Then we'll continue the Beyond the Badge journey. Okay.
Yes. Thank you
Thank you
so
so much,
much.
Renee, for today, and
Thank you,
thanks
Magic.
everyone for listening to us. And
Yes.
we'll talk soon.
Bye bye.